Hey there, my name is Rachel Kalaki.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Shelby. And welcome to the Magdala Podcast.
We know from experience that pornography, masturbation, and other sexual addictions are not just a guy problem.
The need for women to be accompanied in their journey toward healing from addiction has gone sorely unmet, and that's why we're here.
Magdala is a space where women can find hope, healing, and freedom from sexual addiction through support, community, and accountability.
Here on the podcast, you'll find everything from testimonies to practical advice to discussions on how to live fully as a Catholic woman.
You are not alone, and wherever you are on your journey, we welcome you to this table. Okay, ladies and possibly gentlemen, welcome back. With me and Rachel here today, we were just continuing a conversation about a production of Les Mis that Rachel just saw, and we are beginning sort of a series on restoration. And what I didn't add to our conversation, Rachel, is I did date a guy in college who did play Valjean in Les Mis, and so just it was hard for me to go back and watch Les Mis, but I will say in testimony that the Lord has restored that part of my heart, and I have gone back to watch Les Mis. But wondering your off the cuff thoughts on Les Mis.
On Jesuit High School Tampa's production of Les Mis.
Correct, that too.
Oh, it was excellent. Yeah, this is the high school where my husband currently works, and yeah, they're excellent. They're excellent in a lot of things that they do. He's been very blessed to work there, but yeah, theater's no exception. They went hard, and they have several high schools around, or yeah, different high school age students that participate. So it's kind of open audition, and yeah, just really cool. I decided, here's my decision. Okay, it's a theater kid to theater kid. All right,
Ready.
It's been a long road, and I've been thinking about my dream character in Les Mis for a long time, and I thought it was Fantine. It's not Fantine, it's Madame Thénardier. I think I would love to play her. Like, it's not Fantine. I don't know. That's the conclusion I reached watching it. This is, I can't remember how many times I've seen it at this point. Like, professionally done, high school, like whatever, movie, blah blah blah. So many different versions. I think I would want to be Madame Thénardier. That's it.
Well, from theater kid to theater kid, do you have an all-time like dream role, like outside of that production, any production?
Do I? Well, okay. I mean, Les Mis, yes. Obviously, like Wicked. I'd want to be in Wicked. I'd
Yeah.
be fine being anybody in Wicked. But little theater kid means it's Wicked. I don't know. Because that was like the show when we were young, too. That was like the newer, hip, like Broadway show. So I just fell in love with Wicked as like a kid. Everybody's like sketched out right now. But I think it's excellent. It's a wonderful show. The movie was good. Saw the movie recently. But it's made for the stage. It's a beautiful show. Anyway, that's mine. I just want to be in Wicked. Don't care who I am. What's yours?
I think we should have a free for all episode where we just talk about our favorite musicals and why.
Amen.
I do think one of my all-time like dream roles would be Catherine in Newsies. It's also a huge part of my testimony. The college that I went to was doing Newsies my sophomore year. I was a shoo-in for the lead because I was the secondary female lead. The year before, the girl was graduating. This was right around the time I had an encounter with Jesus, and the Lord was stripping a lot of things from me. Anyway, they cast a girl that didn't even go to our school. But that whole summer, I was taking voice lessons, just practicing my like mix range because Catherine hit some high notes up there. So I was practicing and really getting ready. I took some tap lessons with my friends. I was like ready, and it didn't go my way. But that was always a fun role. Otherwise, I would want to be like Morticia in Addams Family. I always played like this sassy, evil person.
I did
and I
too.
just vibed.
I was evil, or I was like the character, like quote unquote character actress, where you could play like very rambunctious things. Maybe that's why I'm like I would be Madame Thénardier in Les Mis. But because I think my favorite role I ever played, and this is a very theater kid discussion, was Mrs. Mears in Thoroughly Modern Millie. I loved that role. It was just so fun. And there's objectively some really problematic things about the role, but I had a great time. So I don't know. I had a lot of fun with the more rambunctious out there characters, and I think I just want to continue in that vein. You know?
Yes, yes. Well, my biggest role of all time was Captain Hook in Peter
Oh,
Pan, and
you
so
showed us
that
that
was
video. That was excellent. That was
I've
hilarious.
you can if anyone really wants to deep dive, you can look up my name and Captain Hook, and you can probably find my dad's recordings on YouTube. Might be illegal, anyways, but they're out there for the world to see. But truthfully, Rachel, I do think this relates to some of what we're going to speak to today about restoration,
Mhm.
because like I think of especially both of us who have played more interesting characters rather than not.
Yeah.
I know one of the reasons I've always loved playing the really out there characters. Like I think of Captain Hook, and in the original Peter Pan, there was a line that he says. Now there's a new touring version that's a little more, let's just say, a little more woke, and they changed
Yeah.
some of the lines. But one of his lines in the original, when he finally captured all the lost boys, there was this evil line. He goes, "I'm going to have a holocaust of children," and he does an evil laugh. Obviously, a horrible line, but it
Yeah.
speaks to the evil and craziness of this man. And one of the reasons I love playing a character like that is being able to sympathize and understand
Mhm.
such darkness, trying to be able to come to understand the woundedness of people. That's what we do in our job all the time, and really be able to find a glimmer of hope in them, because most
Yeah.
people and most characters think they're doing the right thing, and it was this ability to find your own story of restoration of what seems so dark and evil, and to be able to sympathize with someone who's not. And so
Mhm.
all that to say, we're starting this series on restoration, specifically restoring the four relationships. So the relationships of us with God, with self, with other people, and with creation. These are the four primary relationships of man. And we wanted to sort of dive into how journeys with sexual sin, sexual brokenness impact those things,
Mhm.
and how because of the fall, these things have been disrupted and aren't what they're meant to be. But the Lord promises restoration to all things. He promises in
Mhm.
Revelation that He will wipe away every tears. He promises the abundant life, that there is restoration, real restoration in these areas. And yet, I also know it's sometimes hard to dialogue about what does real restoration look like now when we're still not at the other side of the kingdom, and how do we live in
Yeah.
the restoration He has for us now while He's still restoring us to our complete glory in heaven. And so those are just some of the things we're going to talk about as we go into this series, talking about the four relationships. Rachel, is there anything you want to share just as we go into this series together? Anything of why you wanted to do this series, or why you think it's
Mhm.
important to have this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at it from the perspective of this is what the fall took from us, because I think we reference the fall quite a lot, reference sin quite a lot. We don't necessarily reflect on what does it actually mean to have a good but fallen nature, which is the Catholic belief, is that we have a good nature yet a fallen one. What does it feel like, look like to exist in that state? And what does the incarnation, passion, death, and resurrection of Christ bring us back to? So I feel like we throw around a lot of buzzwords without actually thinking of what's the effect. So I'm excited to talk about it. I don't think I've ever, until we were talking about this series, looked at um those four original relationships through the lens of sexual sin. So I'm pumped, and I'm glad you're hosting too, because I think you're gonna have a really good view of this. And it's also nice to not be. This is the first episode I've recorded that I'm not hosting, so it's nice to just kind of like sit. I like it. I like it a lot.
You just get to be interviewed and asked all the questions. And I have to bring it back to theater, because when I think of the four relationships in my past years of life running retreats, one of the
Mhm.
retreats we would run for sixth graders, the very first like play skit that we would put on stage had to do with the four relationships. So it's a faith
Mhm.
and science retreat. So we talked a lot about creation. And in
Yeah.
order to talk about creation, we brought out the four relationships, and then it showed how all of these were disrupted because of sin. It's
Mhm.
acted it out, So you have Adam come on stage and he flirts with Eve, and then they fall in love, but then their hearts get broken after
Yeah.
sin comes into the picture and they eat the apple. This whole whole dramatic thing. So as we share some of this, I might have some anecdotes of watching a sixth grade skit that I've seen on this. But as you shared, and why we're going to dive into this is that the fall has disrupted all of our relationships, and today we're talking about our relationship with God, our spiritual life, our faith.
Yeah.
For women who are watching who have experienced sexual sin, sexual brokenness, which is all women, your relationship with God has changed and been disrupted because of it. And I am not saying anything new. I'm saying something that you're already very, very aware of. But I'd love for us to go into, I guess, some specifics of how we've seen sexual sin, sexual brokenness, like disrupt this relationship in our own life in Magdala women. So I know that's a big question, Rachel, and there's many things we could say. But when I first asked, like, how have you seen sexual sin disrupt like this relationship with God?
Mm. Woof. I mean, digging into my own story, um, there was a profound sense of hiding, you know? Um, just hiding from God in prayer, hiding from Him in relationships with other people, which we'll touch on in a different episode. But the disruption for me was, yeah, this sense of hiding, the behaviors that I was engaged in, but also hiding the reasons why, because I don't think I understood at the time very well. But I just remembered, yeah, I remember some just feelings in prayer, because high school was when I really started to have a personal prayer life, I'd say, and like have more structure to it and that sort of thing. Largely influenced by some of my Protestant friends and just their personal devotion. They helped me a lot with kind of more structure
Yeah.
to my prayer life. Um, but yeah, I remember like having these times of prayer, reflecting on scripture, all of this like with the Lord, and just this sneaking sense coming up at the end of like, yeah, none of this actually matters for you at all because you're hiding all of this. You're doing all of this. And obviously it wasn't actually
Mm.
hidden before the Lord. But it was very much that garden feeling of like, yeah, being naked, being ashamed, and hiding away, hiding from God. So the primary disruption that I sensed in myself, and then I see repeat itself a lot, and I'm sure you do too, in our participants, is this hiding from God. Um, and I'd say, and that's a sense of shame. Um, but I'd say kind of conversely, with that hiding comes like a performance. Like you perform for God. You perform. Like if I'm gonna mess up horribly in this one area, I'm gonna do so well in all these others. And look at me, I'm smart. I'm pious. I'm friendly. I'm accomplishing all these things over here so that you can ignore what's going on over here. And again, obviously the Lord doesn't actually ignore it. He has his eyes on it the whole time, but I just found that kind of that twofold effect of this this hiding away from God and this performance, this living into this like Christian girl identity, this ideal that doesn't actually exist, this
Yeah.
like stereotype. So that's what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very similarly. I would use different language, but even when I was first engaging in a lot of sexual sin and wouldn't really identify in the realm of Christianity or my Catholicism relationship with the Lord,
Yeah.
I still felt this outcast feeling in my faith. Like there were multiple times I went
Yeah.
to what was um sort of our youth group, and I went to mass regularly, so I was versed in the language, but I definitely wasn't the homeschool kids there, and so I felt
Yeah.
this outcast from what felt like my in to my relationship with the Lord. So I felt outcasted from him, and yet at the same time I felt maybe the rebellious spirit in me, that I was the
Yeah.
free and liberalized Catholic Christian, that I could be Christian and engage in these things.
Yeah.
It's totally okay. And all of these other people are just so outdated. But 16-year-old me totally understands. I totally get this and you guys don't. And so there
Yeah.
was even this like rebellion from the Lord of I can almost remember like myself. I might have shared this story in a podcast, but once or twice I remember being in mass and and pulling some ultimatums on the Lord, thinking that I almost like could control him,
Yeah.
but being like, okay, if the priest says this word twice in the homily and this baby coughs in front of me and whatever else, then it's totally okay that I'm engaging in these things, and it's okay that I'm living my life in this way.
Mm.
And even like coincidences were to happen, it still never felt right. But I always felt in this like rebellion with the Lord. I mean, likening back to the garden, this desire to be God, to be like God,
Mm.
the promise that's stated in the garden of
Yeah.
I can be the one in control because I don't want to stop what I'm doing. So might
Yeah.
as well just put myself in power, which then, of course, disrupts my relationship with the Lord. And I can see over years of healing and still of ways that I will combat heads with the Lord and want to take control and want to take the
Right.
throne, because all my life I thought I thought I had the power to convince him of that,
Mm.
thinking that I could control, yeah, this area of my life. So I saw my rebellious spirit come out a lot.
Mm. Yeah. And that has to do it ties in deeply with, like, the hallmark of addiction. It's, self-deception. Self-deception is ultimately a form
Yeah,
of control. You're trying to control how you view yourself, what morality is, but also how others view you. And yeah, deception's ultimately rooted in kind of that pride, that self-protectiveness.
for sure. And not only my own self-deception I'm experiencing, but then the process, then you get deceived of who God is or who you think God
Yeah.
is. And that's
Yeah.
another way that this relationship is ruptured. I know another way that I have felt this rupture in my relationship with the Lord is ways that I've been so hurt in my sexuality, been used by other people,
Yeah.
by myself. I've continually gone back to the Lord asking, where were you? And I thought you were supposed to protect me. If
Yeah.
you are protector, why haven't you been there? Why didn't you stop me from
Mm.
engaging in this? When I'm actively trying to not do this thing, why weren't you there? Why didn't you
Mm.
keep me safe? That these are the promises of the Lord. Like I read Psalm 91 a lot, like those
Yeah.
who abide in the shadow of the Lord, or the shade of the Almighty, and say to the God, my refuge, my strength, like He will keep you safe, like all the angels will come and fight for you, all of that. Like these
Yeah.
are things I would read, and then there I would go falling back into something that I'm actively trying not to do. And I'm like, Jesus, I thought you were supposed to protect me from these things.
Yeah.
I'm praying, quote unquote, doing the right thing. And once again, I'm having a distortion of who God is as my protector and safekeeping, that He is just not in the way that I was expecting. So it's always a little bit different than what you think, what you think the Lord is. But I
Yeah.
think like in our relationships, both we deceive ourselves and then we're deceived of who God is in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I I definitely felt the lack of protection or omnipotence of, like, are you actually good and powerful? Or, like, are you just powerful and not good, or are you just good and not powerful? Like that kind of conundrum that we can fall into. Um, I think I also felt like God created me wrong. That was like one of the big things that
Mm,
I had to work through, is like you messed up. You made a mistake. Or you and that I think that lie manifests itself in so many different ways, but I know in sexual sin that was one of mine. And I think part of that was born of the male female stereotyping of, girls don't do this. It's like what's so wrong with me that I do, you know?
mm,
Um and I think that's why I think we all fight kind of tooth and nail against those stereotypes, because they cause very deep, like, identity based harm. Like, they're not,
yeah.
and we don't it's not just like we're talking heads just kind of targeting anything, or like want to completely dissipate any male female difference. It's more like these cause like it causes very very deep harm, about like thinking about who you are, who God is. But I had this sense that He messed up, or had created me to be far from Him. That was
Mm,
the best way to put it. I can't really think of another way. And and yeah, they're just trapped by the enemy in that lie in multiple ways, multiple times. Of, you created me to be distant from you. You created me for misery, for tragedy. this is a manifestation of my complete inability to get myself out of anything, and that you're just going to leave me here. So I became very skeptical of God, kind of deep down, of like, yeah, that he doesn't protect, he doesn't take care, and he'll just let us destroy ourselves. And
Mm.
and there, in these lies, there's like a kernel of truth, is that like he will let us destroy ourselves if we truly don't reach out for help, if we truly don't receive help. He will let us choose destruction. But the lie is that I wasn't seeing that he gives it everything he has, like truly everything, infinity and everything, to make sure that we don't choose that. But yeah, and still, I mean, to be honest, still working through some of those deceptions, right? And still
Yes.
asking the questions of, where were you, God, and what were you saying
Yes.
when this person was saying this? What were you doing when this was happening to me? Like all of that. And there's been more like intense times of prayer, but like I'm still deceived about who God is, and still look at my own story through lenses of pain, or woundedness, or self-condemnation, or deception. It's not perfect. That's part of the recovery too, is recovering the vision of who you are and who God is. But yeah, it's been, I don't know, that's kind of a weird note to end my thought on, but you know what I mean. It's an ongoing thing.
Yes, yes. And so much of why it continues to be ongoing is our relationship with the Lord manifests in so many different ways, that we
Right.
experience the Lord through the sacraments, through prayer, in a very particular way through priests and religious, in a very particular way through our youth ministers, our teachers, people who represent God and the church. And so,
Yep.
well, yes, we're gonna have a episode talking about others. There's a key part that our relationship with the Lord is clearly impacted and can be ruptured by these people who, in our minds, for good or for bad, are speaking on his behalf. As you were sharing a lot of the skepticism you were experiencing about the Lord, I was reminded of multiple conversations I had in college, with people in my campus ministry who, for one way or another, didn't see a need, for something like Magdala, didn't see a need for having conversations like this, and the hurt that I experienced, the isolation that I experienced, specifically after talking with so many women, knowing that I'm not alone in this experience, that more women want to have this conversation, and yet being shut down, did feel like I was being shut down by the Lord. Even if at that point, I had a daily prayer life, I could sit down with Jesus, I could really like feel in my heart deeply that Jesus was affirming what I was doing, and yet these people that felt like, again, spokespeople of
Yeah.
him were saying otherwise. There's even more disruption of, like, can I even hear the Lord right? I know this has
Absolutely.
been experience I've heard a lot of Magdala women, but especially because of their relationship with sexual sin and trying to figure out, am I in the wrong? And then you get into gray areas of things where it can just be like, like we've had these conversations, but like I wake up from a dream, a sexual dream. So I know that wasn't sinful, but I still feel icky, and I try to talk to the Lord and I can't really hear him. That even just these sort of gray area experiences of our sexuality can disrupt our relationship with the Lord, especially when we feel like we can't hear him clearly in prayer, when we're not interacting with him, even if we're engaging in the sacraments, but we feel dryness, and we don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of ways that even in the active addiction, you can be doing, quote, all the right things and still feel far from the Lord because of what other people are saying, because of how much you're able to hear the Lord's engagement in prayer. There's just so many things that can disrupt this relationship.
Yeah, I think the connection to the church is important, and we'll definitely hit. I think this is kind of the God and others, like you're saying, because as Catholics we see the church as Christ's bride, right? So they're united. Um, Unfortunately, the church is not a spotless bride, so it's, yeah. I'm thinking even of like the same conversations with campus ministry when I was in college. Um, and wanted to start a support group that eventually became the model for Magdala. And
Yeah.
being met with just ambiguity or dismissive. Like there were some conversations where it seemed like we were on the same page, and other conversations where it was very much dismissed. Like um, and being met with that even now. I was at a fundraiser recently where I'm talking to potential donors, and they're saying something about like um they're all impassioned for the cause, which is great. Like fundraisers going well, this whole thing. And then they're asking about campus groups. And I'm saying, well, actually, yeah, like pricing is an obstacle for some campuses, or these things are obstacles for some campuses. Some campuses don't believe that this is an issue for women because they've never been approached. Um, and I'm listing out kind of the obstacles that we have, better than anyone, to like getting
Yeah.
on a campus, right? And people are shocked. They're shocked that there's these obstacles, right? They're like, you still have to convince people that this is an issue, and it's like, yes, I do, and um, but they're completely shocked by that. But I'm like, no, and they said like, well, is it like the public universities that you have trouble with? I said, no, it's the Catholic universities, actually, like the ones that, at least in my conversations with campuses, that have the most resistance are typically Christian schools. And there is like a pain in those conversations when it comes back up, because it's like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm 20 sitting in the campus ministry office again, like begging you to see that this is a problem, whether or not you have ever been approached in a conversation like by a woman about this. Like, I'm begging you to see us. And feeling again in that moment, like you're talking about, we can check this with the Lord, we can bring it to him in prayer, but feeling again for a split second like, oh, the church doesn't see me, you know? Um, and therefore, if the church doesn't see me, then Christ must not. And that's been a unique pain, I think, of working for Magdala, is encountering that wound over and over of like, oof, the church. Yeah, like the most opposition that we get is actually internally, not externally. I think, again, that's another kind of conversation that comes up with people, is that like they see us as like on the front lines of battling the porn industry or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe I like the idea of that. I don't think that's necessarily what we're doing. I think there are other people doing very effective work against the porn industry. But more that the opposition that we face has come from within. It's come from within the church, and resistance to accepting that this is a problem, resistance to accepting our language about it or our approach.
Yeah.
Like, and that does kind of hit that disruption feeling again, of that like God does not care, like he doesn't see. And it's obviously not true, but I'm just kind of, again, I'm answering questions, so I'm probably going more dense than I should, but that's the feeling. Is that
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
God does not care, which is not, yeah, oh my gosh, it's such a lie, but it's easy to feel that as a woman trapped in sexual sin, or as a woman working for an organization that helps women trapped in sexual sin.
Yes, yes. And you're describing perfectly the duplicity that I think we've all felt in one way or another. So the distortion of God, that God doesn't care about me,
Right.
and then the distortion of self, that because I am Christian, Catholic, because I'm a missionary, because I pray every day, because whatever your thing
Yeah,
is,
insert.
I shouldn't do this. That somehow I'm above this. Like, it makes sense for the secular culture, the
Yeah.
hookup culture, and OnlyFans. It makes sense for those people, right? For those people to go off and do this. But again, this identity crisis of like, but me? But I go to a Catholic university.
Yep.
I've been homeschooled. Jason Everett spoke at my school when I was in 7th grade, and I lie on the charity card. Yes, I've been wearing a purity ring for years. I haven't had my first kiss, like whatever, like, the list can go on and on. But because of this, me, somehow I'm so much greater than all of this. I shouldn't do this. It hits the same identity crisis wound there, a distortion of self and a distortion with the Lord, a distortion of what the church is, that somehow church people have it all together, which we know isn't true, but can still always feel like that, um, this sense that I don't belong then in the church because of it. And then again, this all plays into, because our relationship with the church is so interconnected with our relationship with the Lord. If I feel unworthy, unwanted by the church, then I feel unworthy, unwanted by God. I can feel too damaged, too sinful to go to church, too dirty. I mean, we can insert all the conversations that we've had through our work with
Yeah.
women about like receiving the Eucharist, having to go to
Oh
confession.
my
Like,
gosh, yeah.
what if I'm going every single day? Like that can just get draining. So then it
Yeah.
might just be so tiring that you might not even want to go because you're already experiencing so many lies that you don't belong there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like just this experience of uh this Christianity, this Catholicism, our faith, because it's so important to us, because it's so close to our identity. This can
Yeah.
be one of the main places that the enemy will want to attack by saying like, "Oh, but you lead all the ministries." I mean, we were talking before this, but just because you're a missionary or an active ministry work doesn't mean
Oh
that
gosh,
you
yeah. Jeez.
might not struggle with addiction. That this isn't a thing for the most broken among us. This is a human thing. And the
Yeah.
reality is we're all the most broken among us. We're
Yeah.
all a freaking mess
That's
trying to
the
figure it out.
hiding.
But
That's the hiding in the
yeah,
performance. And it,
yeah,
'cause, oh, go ahead, sorry.
you go,
No,
you
I'm
go.
just thinking about like how malicious and how diabolical that lie is.
Yeah.
Because it is saying like I need to not need God. Like to be virtuous, to be Catholic, to be Christian, to be whatever, to be good, I need to not need God. And that's like the complete opposite because to exist is to need God. Like you are in fundamental, never ending need of God. He holds you in existence. You are entirely dependent upon him. Like my moral theology professor or fundamental moral theology professor in grad school. He had this like he's just so funny. Shout out to Dr. Long, love him. But he would say he's like God is not essentially dependent on us. It's not God the Son, God the Father, God the Spirit, and Steve. But Steve is essentially dependent upon God. Like he would just like rant but I always remember that of like
That's
to exist
awesome.
is to be essentially dependent upon God. But that's such a diabolical lie that it's like actually in order to fit in, you need to need God less. Um and yeah, that's it. That's just malicious.
The Magdala podcast is sponsored by the Catholic Theology Show, presented by Ave Maria University. The Catholic Theology Show covers themes such as the value of a Catholic higher education, religious liberty, how to pray, the philosophies of St. Thomas Aquinas, and more. Stream episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and learn more by visiting the link below.
Okay, Rachel, so here's what I've discovered. Our relationship with God has been quite distorted, because
Yep.
of our sexual brokenness. So, what do we do about that? How do we go about restoring that? What does restore that? And obviously, I mean, the first thing I want to say is that we don't do anything. While we can partner with the
Yes.
Lord, we are not the one restoring this relationship. The relationship with God, He is the ultimate restorer. He is the one who
Yeah.
saves us. He is the one who brings us back to us. Um, there's not any amount of us wanting it bad enough that can restore this relationship into perfection. Obviously, the Lord is not going to force himself on us if we are adamantly opposed to him coming into this. But if we have any desire for restoration here, the Lord is at work and wants to come in and restore this relationship. So, as we flip gears of what to do post fall, how do we get out of this, and how do we restore this relationship? Starting with, we're not giving you practical tips of everything you can do because you can't do anything. But also, the Lord does give you grace to partner with His grace to take steps to be closer to Him. So there's a both and there. But Rachel, what are some things that can help bring restoration to this relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, personal prayer has been the first place, sacraments and personal prayer, and letting the Lord tell me who he is. Um and sometimes it's repetitive. I feel like he has to repeatedly remind me who he is,
Yes.
qualities about him that
Yes.
are so hard for me to receive. Um, and I think in personal prayer, going back into particular memories where you can identify that you received a wound about God, you can kind of trace some sort of rupture to a particular moment. Praying in those, asking where God is, what is he saying? What is he doing? What does he want you to receive now in this particular memory? That's important. The sacraments, turning continually to the sacraments.
Yeah.
I think for me, and we'll talk about this in relationship with others, the biggest like crucible of what do I believe about God has been the sacrament of marriage. So I know I'm very grateful for my spouse and to be in our marriage because it's it holds a mirror to your beliefs about yourself and your beliefs about God.
Yeah.
And what is grace? Being a flawed person married to another flawed person, like wow, yeah. Only grace can achieve what we're hoping for here and our participation with it. So I know a lot of healing for me of who God is has come through my husband's example, um, but also just being in our marriage. And on that note, just as representatives of the church can hurt you and disrupt your relationship with God, there also can be a very profound repair in
Yes.
believing what other people say about God. Which
Yes.
sounds kind of strange, but just if something from somebody, doesn't matter who it is, like really resonates with you about a quality of God, pay attention. Like, why is it resonating? Like, why is
Yeah.
somebody's
Yeah.
belief, like, was it somebody's faith affecting you that deeply and moving you that deeply? I have some writers, scholars, people I know who's just their expression of faith moves me in a very particular way. I'm thinking like C.S. Lewis, perhaps more than anyone. The way C.S. Lewis writes about God moves the parts of me that feel the rupture the most. And so there's
Yeah.
this movement towards a new understanding of who God is and his writing for me that resonates very deeply. Ratzinger's the same way, Benedict XVI. There is a like reading Deus Caritas Est. It's like, oh, this is who God is. Okay. Um, I do not understand, like an acceptance of that. So I'd say that too, of pay attention just as people have hurt you, with their perception of God, their representation of God to you. Pay attention to the people who move you positively as well, because there's been a lot of restoration for me in that. So that's the beginning.
Yes. Yes. God is ever desiring that you would see him in the right order. Like a good
Yes.
father doesn't want you to view and experience him as a drunk alcoholic when he's not, that the Lord wants you to see him in the right light. And so, if you are desiring that and you ask him for that, he's going to put the right people in your path who are going to reveal that to you, whether through their words, through their writings, through their actions, those sort of things. And what you hit on, I don't think we can hit on enough, the sacramental graces of the church, that might not always feel like it, but thank you, God, that our faith is more than feelings, right? If you have to go to confession every single day, and every confession you go to, the priest doesn't give you any spiritual direction. He just tells you to pray a Hail Mary and just move on with it, and you don't feel seen. Like
Right.
there is still grace there, even if it's not the experience that you wanted. Going to a mass with the most uh, mid choir and the retired priest who is just saying a run on sentence for 20 minutes of his homily that doesn't make any sense. And I mean, the list goes on and on of funny mass experiences we've had.
Yeah.
It is still this who's coming tangibly to you inside of you. It's coming inside your mouth, one of the most intimate spaces. Talk about
Yeah.
restoring our sexuality, that he comes on the tongue, one of the I'll say sexual parts of our body that you could associate with us, that
Yeah.
the Lord comes to heal and come deeply inside us, just that we are experiencing the deepest of spousal loves at the
Right.
Mass, that any ache that we have for intimacy, the Lord is looking to restore specifically like in the Eucharist. And so
Yeah.
uh, going to the sacraments to actually receive him, because if he's the one who's going to restore this relationship, let's go straight to Jesus. Go to Jesus in the Eucharist. Go to Jesus in confession. Go to Jesus in personal prayer. Go to Jesus in adoration. Go to Jesus in trusted counsel. But if he's the one who's going to restore this
Hmm.
relationship, taking advantage of what the church has to give us,
Hmm.
which is himself. The church exists to bring forth the groom. If the church is the bride, she just wants to show off her groom essentially, and so we get to go receive the Lord in the
Hmm.
sacramental life. We need the sacraments, bro.
We
You
need
know?
the sacraments, bro. Yes.
Yeah. More sacraments, yes. And
Um.
even and just other thing I'll add to this is, depending on where you are, sometimes these sacraments are less available.
Right.
Sometimes adoration is less available, confession is less available. I'm not saying this is just easy. I'm not saying you just get to hop in your car, drive a mile down the road, and then you're there. Like, I
Right.
recognize that this is not a convenience with work schedule, all sorts of things. A lot of people, daily mass is an option. Totally understand those things. Um, but asking the question, like, what do you want and what are you willing to do for it?
Hmm.
What do you want to fight for? Like, if this is your groom, if this is spousal love, making time for him, and not saying quitting your job or negating other commitments,
Right.
leaving your child at home, not saying those things, but I'm saying, how can you look at your schedule and find a way to incorporate more of the Lord into your life? If you want to
Hmm.
restore relationship with him, you do that by spending time with him, and
Right.
any time spent with him is never wasted. It might feel like you sit in a holy hour and you get nothing out of it, but I guarantee you that time is never wasted. I speak that over my own heart when I go to
Yeah.
prayer and it feels dry. Like, time with the Lord is never wasted. And if we want to restore relationship with him, you have to spend time with him. Like, I just think of
Yeah.
Rachel in your marriage. It's like, if you are feeling disunity with Tommy that doesn't get healed by ignoring each other more, you have to
No.
spend time together. That's the antidote to that, you know?
Right.
And so spending time with
Right.
the Lord, like, is the answer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We.
Amen. Well, my only other thing I wanted to talk about, Rachel, is like, what is this? These are some practical things we can do, obviously, to grow
Hmm.
closer to the Lord. But when we talk about living in this restoration, real restoration is
Hmm.
possible. I guess a good question that I feel like we've experienced from our women is, um, uh, while somehow incorrect, has some truth to it. The question being like, how do I know when I'm healed? You know, and the answer is like, well, you never are. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Not
a
on this
constant
side.
journey,
Yeah.
which can be annoying. But I guess another way to ask this question is, what would you say real restoration looks
Mm.
like in the area? Like, can you hold to any practical examples of knowing, like, wow, I've
Hmm.
experienced a real restoration in my relationship with the Lord. Again, not perfect restoration, but I can tell that something that was broken has been restored to right order
Yeah.
in my relationship with Him. What would you say this like practically looks like?
Yeah. Two things. And you kind of touched on this. When we were outlining, like, discussing. Yeah, just a freedom from scrupulosity. I know I became very scrupulous, very white knuckled, very controlling over chastity. When I was in early recovery, because it was like I'm never gonna be that person who makes a mistake again. I'm never gonna get this wrong. And that translated into, like, my personal life and my relationships, dating, like, all that kind of stuff is just like, nope, I'm never gonna go there again. Part of that was good, of like, yes, you shouldn't want to go there again. Part of it lacked mercy towards myself and towards others. Um, so that lack of scrupulosity, of fear of going back, I think is restorative or indicative of restoration, should say. Um, and the other is like not giving a shit what people think. Like, to put it bluntly. Like,
Yeah.
and this is an ongoing one, but both you and I do like public work in this space, um, and just caring less and less and less and less about what people say, what people think, what people assume when this is a public part of your life. Um, yeah, I think at the beginning of Magdala, um, I I cared more. I still care sometimes. But it is really just become like, who does God say that I am, and who do I believe He is? And at the end of the day, that's everything. And no one, nothing can take Him away from me. No one can change how He sees me. Like, just a security in that. I feel like I'm not summarizing this super well, but yeah, just really not giving a damn what people think. I think
Yes.
that doesn't mean that everyone is called to share their story as much as possible. That doesn't mean like, and yeah, it doesn't mean any of that. Actually, for many people, prudence suggests, yeah, keep this private, tell trusted people, right? I think working within Magdala is a unique role right now for both of us, um, but yeah, just letting that be the foundation. Who He says I am, who I believe He is. That's it. That can't be taken. That's the biggest, I'd say, indicator for me.
Yes, yes. And to put language to exactly what you're saying, it doesn't mean that, again, if something has something horrible to say about you, that you can't get annoyed by it, but there's a difference between like simple reaction of annoyance or anger
Yep.
and like this, I'm distraught over this thing, like I'm telling 15 people about it afterwards, I'm bringing it to prayer for the next 5 days. I'm still not over this. When I see
Yeah.
them in the room the next day, I can't like function around them. That, like, just practically, like, that's some of the language we're saying. Or even when you speak to scrupulosity, right? It's like I wake up from a sexual dream and I'm thinking about it for the next 5 hours. Did I do the right thing? Trying to reinterpret every minor detail of my thought, peek into the
Yeah.
crevices of trying to figure out whether or not I've sinned, going to confession 3 times just to make sure. Or do I wake up from a sexual dream and be like, wow, I feel a little off, but I'm okay.
That was weird.
Jesus, are you
Yeah.
here with me? Like
Yeah.
practically that's just some language, like the difference that we're talking about. And
Yeah.
odds are even as I share that language, you could be anywhere on that spectrum, probably somewhere in between. Those are two extremes that, just speaking like again from testimony of both of us, that we are living in that restoration, that when I wake up from a sexual dream, I know I'm okay. It doesn't destroy me. Years
Yeah.
ago it did,
For
but
sure.
today it doesn't.
For
I'm
sure.
okay. I can brush my teeth and move on with my day. And just one other example of like real restoration, I would say, is just being able to be in consistent communication about this with Jesus. So
Yep.
almost bringing back what you brought up initially, Rachel, of not hiding. That I'm in a place in my relationship with the Lord where immediately when this comes up, I can't imagine going anywhere, but immediately pausing
Yep.
everything
Yep.
to sit down with the Lord, like, Jesus, we got to talk about that one later because that was weird. But
Yeah.
being in consistent communication, asking for consistent healing.
Yep.
Healing in this area is never a one and done thing. And thank you, God, for people who have experienced amazing transformation in one moment. That is an insane amount of grace that is plunging you forward into a continuous journey because He
Amen.
has more and He has more and more healing. And so the more that you are able to talk to Him about this. So when these wounds come up, when you get poked again, is this a place that you try to hide from? Gosh, Jesus, I can't deal with this again. Do you immediately shut down with lies? That you get quiet in the conversation? Do you go and you hide in your room? You isolate?
Yep.
Or when these things get poked in a public space, are you able to be like, wow, that was okay, I got to look at that later, but I'm going to hold on to that for now. I'm going
Right.
to hold it in. And then me and Jesus are going to talk about it at the next most convenient time that we
Right.
can. Like that is restoration. And I just want to speak to any woman who's listening to this who isn't experiencing something like that, is surrounded by just a plethora of thoughts that feel out of control, of lies, of me. Um, mean thought patterns, maybe that this has been going on for so long that you think that this is normal and
Yeah.
everyone thinks like this. Like, I just want to speak that real restoration there is possible, that
Yeah.
Jesus says, be still to the storm in your mind. And there's a way to coexist with these things, to find the Lord within our sexual desires, and a life free of the chaos, of the scrupulosity, of
Yeah.
the stress place on yourself, the perfectionism, all of it. Like, there's real restoration there.
Absolutely. And adding to that, just a final thought, a lot of the processing with the Lord, open communication with the Lord about these wounds or just ongoing healing came from like direct personal prayer, spiritual experiences. A lot of it came in therapy for me too, of processing with a very
Yeah.
experienced prayerful therapist, um and just like discussing God image, discussing false beliefs, discussing negative mental patterns, anxiety, like the things that were preventing me from seeing God's action and um God's essence clearly, Um so I think that's uh, to me that's I say it's necessary. Obviously not everybody gets into talk therapy, but that therapeutic aspect of like, okay, part of my restoration with God is like, yeah, just taking time to unlearn these patterns that I have, to remove these obstacles that may be coming from my mind, um, to address these wounds, to look at them with someone else, with a professional. That was huge for me. So adding on to that as well, that can be a great space to reconnect with God, is with an intermediary, with somebody else. So
And I would even add that real restoration looks like being comfortable and okay with that. So,
yeah,
with anyone who has difficulty with the idea of therapy, if that part feels poked right there,
yeah,
just know it doesn't mean, like you said, that every single person is mandated to do
talk
therapy. That's
therapy,
not,
right?
we don't even know your
Yeah,
story. We're not here to tell you what to do. But saying that if you feel real deep hesitations to not doing that, that could even be an area that the Lord is inviting restoration in, specifically so that he
mhm,
can restore his relationship with you. And why we started this whole series and talking about our relationship with the Lord is because this is the most important and foundational relationship that we have
yep,
is with Jesus, who desires to bring real restoration to your life, to your relationship with yourself, with others, with creation.
yeah.
It's real and it's possible, and we are on this journey together, trying to find that together. So, on this journey of healing, this is Annie and Rachel as we talk about restoration, and tune back in next week, next 2 weeks, as we continue this series. God bless you guys.
Thanks for listening. Check out more podcast episodes, blog posts, and how to get involved with Magdala by visiting our website, magdalaministries.org. Your love is meant to change the world. We hope to see you soon.